Okay, so we're going to look at combining motion tracking and particle systems, and we're going to try and get something like this. So we've got the guy's hand being tracked, and we've got a particle system that's matching the movement of the red dot. And you'll also see that we've added in a little bit of light action as well, and a bit of shadows just to give it a little bit more realism. Okay, so the first thing that we'll need to do is to start with a track, which I've already done, so don't need to go over tracking again, but basically I've just tracked the guy's hand as was shown in the transform tracking video. Okay, so that is already there. So what I can do now is I can get a null, and the only thing that this null is going to do is receive the tracking data from my track the hand video. Now the reason I'm using a null is just basically as a kind of an intermediate step so that I can find the keyframes that contain the property changes, and then I can reuse those or recycle those on my particle system. So the null won't really be used for anything except for me to be able to see the keyframes that are created by my motion tracking. So I'll load up my tracking information and find a target null 1. Click apply, X and Y, yes please, click OK. So the null is now basically moving as a target to the tracking data. But what I'm really interested is in these keyframes, because I want to be able to copy and paste these onto things that can't be directly associated with the tracking data, such as particle systems properties. So I'll just close that for the moment and create a particle system. So to do that, I create my solid. Doesn't matter what color, because it's going to disappear as soon as I get my CC particle system. I'll just name it particles. Okay, so particles has the effect, and it has a producer which has a position property. Okay, and this position property cannot be used as a target for my motion tracker. So all I need to do is to get my null object, which contains all of those keyframes that were created when it was used as a target for the tracker. Copy, create a keyframe on the position, and paste. So you can see that the producer point actually just moved down there. And I can switch this off now, or delete it, or do whatever I want with it. Sorry, not the particle system, but the null object, because I now have the particle system basically tracking the guy's hand. That's hard to see now because it's such a dense spray of particles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing with the particle system to get it to look a little bit more like the end result. And to do that, one of the first things I'll do is change the particle from line to faded sphere. Change the colors. I'll just go with white for the moment. I can change that afterwards. So white to white. Okay. Transfer mode, I can leave that for the moment. Now, in terms of getting this to look less like a kind of a snowfall and more like a trail, I need to tell the particle system, okay, don't allow them to move away from the producer point. Don't allow them to fall to the ground. So that's going to be in physics. And to do that, I'm going to first of all change the gravity to 0 and change the velocity to 0, so I don't want them to move off. And now you can see more of what I'm looking for here. So now I'm looking for more of a trail that doesn't get necessarily bigger as it moves out. I want it to get thinner, so I'll change that to 0, change the berth size to maybe 0.5. Again, you can change all these. 2 maybe. I could change the birth rate there if I wanted to. Maybe the longevity could be changed so that they stay on screen a little bit longer. And the other thing I might want to change in the producer is the actual size of the producer. And if I change that to 0 on both, it'll just create a point. So now it's looking like I want it to look. Okay. Now, from there on in, I can change as many things as I need to make this look more like a kind of a longer trail or a softer trail or whatever. But I could change, for instance, the depth color now to something a different shade. Maybe I've got too many being born there, so I'll bring that down to 2. Change it to add to give it a kind of a glow. And let's see, there's probably a few more things I could do here, just for the moment. I'll just leave it as is. Okay. I'll just do a ramp preview just to see if it's matching up. Right, so that is the particle system. Now, to knock out the green background, then you can just look at the key light video, but I have one set up here, and if I just click it to switch it on, you'll see that it knocks out the background. Okay, so that is basically me getting the particles to match the hand and the guy against an empty background. Now I want to basically add in a background here, and I'm going to do that through the use of a solid. And this can be white. In fact, I will leave it white just for the moment, and name it BG for background. Pull it down to the bottom, and he's against that white background now. What I will also do now is I'll actually throw this back in, or turn it into a 3D layer, and throw it back a little bit through its position property. Reason being that I want to have a bit of distance between him and the background so that the shadows can be cast. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a light. And that light can be a point light. I can leave it white, and I can call it a highlight. Click OK, and I need to change the foreground video to 3D as well so I can see the effect of that light. I might just switch off background for a moment, just see the result of that. So that's quite bright. I'll take that down. 100. And maybe take in the radius a little bit as well. Okay, so I'm looking to kind of just cast a bit of light onto the guy where, you know, where basically where the light from the particle system might be throwing light onto him. Now the other thing I want to make sure is that he casts shadows, so I'll click OK, or that the light casts shadows rather. Click OK, that's fine. Switch back on my background. Okay. Now I can play with the lights a little bit, but what I want to do first of all is I want to make sure that the light, which is supposed to be being cast from the particle system, also follows the particle system. And I've already copied a number of position property values when I was moving the particle system, but I can use the same method to lock the movement of the light. Now this is fine. Now what has actually happened is the light is at the same level as the foreground video. If I switch it into top view, you'll see that my light and my guy basically are at the same position. So all I need to do there is just highlight all of the keyframes and pull the Z property out of it. So this is just allowing the light to be on front of the foreground video. I'll switch that back into active camera, and now you'll see we get him back, and the light is following the particle system. Okay, so I can go in now and do a little bit of work with the light, maybe just to get a softer fall off, maybe. And don't forget the light needs to be set to smooth for you to be able to play with the radius of the light. That's fine. Now cast shadows on, and I'll make sure that my guy in the foreground also casts shadows. Now you can see what's going on here. Now our background is starting to catch that shadow, but that shadow looks a little bit nasty. It might be what you're looking for, but I'm going to take down the darkness a bit and soften it a small bit as well. Pretty much. And that is pretty much a lot of what I want to do done. So I'll just do a quick round preview. It's going to take a while to preview this because there's a lot of stuff going on. But you can see the shadow, you can see the light, you can see him. It would probably make sense to make him a little bit grayer or bluer or something like that, just to make him look like he's a little bit more in the dark. He still looks a bit hot there to be color-wise for him to be in a dark environment. Now, the last thing that you can do if you want to really push this forward is to duplicate that light and have a smaller light just on his hands to make it look like there's a real glow coming off the particle system. Now, I don't want to go through making the light and positioning it and copying and pasting pixels and all that, or properties rather. So I'll just duplicate the light, call it highlight small, and open up its properties. Really what I'm just going to change here is in the radius. I'm going to take that right down, switch off the other light just so I can see exactly what's going on with this one, and fall off distance, take that down. So I just want his hand basically being highlighted, and then I can bump up the intensity to make it a lot more of a glow. Switch on my other light. Now I've got two working together. You can see now that there's a real intense light where his hand is. Okay, so that's it. That's using a combination of two lights to replicate the light coming off the particle system, to also cast the shadow on the background from this guy, and he's been green screened, so we have a view past him into the background, and then our background is just a simple solid, so you could have used anything in the background there and it would work just as well.